Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the blue glow of her computer screen in the quiet of her ship's command center. The rest of her crew was sleeping, but sleep would not come to her tonight. For 3 weeks, she had been tracking strange signals coming from the Galactic Council's communication network. What she found made her stomach turn cold. Elena was a good soldier. She had served humanity for 15 years, fighting in what the Council called peace missions. She had led attacks on pirate bases, helped move entire species to safer planets, and destroyed what the Council said were dangerous weapon sites. Every mission was supposed to help keep the galaxy peaceful and safe. But now, looking at the decoded messages on her screen, Elena knew it had all been lies. The first message was from Council leader Zix Thera to another Council member. It read, "The humans continue to serve their purpose well. They eliminated the Corvin resistance without question. Their military strength makes them perfect tools for our needs." Elena's hands shook as she scrolled to the next message. This one was worse. Reminder, humans are classified as Class 7 aggressive species. Too dangerous for real membership, but too useful to waste. Continue assigning them elimination tasks disguised as peacekeeping. When their usefulness ends, we will apply the final solution. The words hit Elena like a punch to the gut. Class 7 aggressive species. She had heard that term before in her military training, but it was never used for humans. It was for species that were considered too violent and primitive to join civilized society. Species that were usually contained or destroyed. Elena opened more files. Her worst fears came true as she read message after message. The Galactic Council had never seen humans as equals. From the moment humanity made first contact 50 years ago, they had been marked as weapons to be used and discarded. Every mission Elena had led, every battle she had fought had been planned by the Council to get rid of their enemies. The pirate bases she destroyed were actually independent colonies that refused to pay Council taxes. The dangerous species she had helped relocate were peaceful people whose planets had valuable resources the Council wanted to steal. Elena remembered the face of Commander Thrak, the Velnari officer she had captured 3 years ago. He had looked at her with such sadness and said, "You don't know what you're doing, do you? You think you're the heroes?" Elena had ignored his words then. Now they echoed in her mind like a curse. She pulled up the files on humanity's integration into galactic society. The official story was that the Council had welcomed humans as junior partners, giving them simple tasks to prove their worth. The truth was different and ugly. The Council's secret files revealed their real plan. Humans were strong fighters and bred quickly. They also had something most galactic species had lost over thousands of years of peace: the willingness to kill when ordered. The Council had spent centuries becoming soft and comfortable. They needed someone else to do their dirty work, so they created a lie. They told humans that the galaxy was full of dangers, and that only through the Council's wisdom could peace be maintained. They gave humans missions that seemed noble, but were actually wars of conquest and genocide. Worst of all, they made humans grateful for the chance to serve. Elena's communication system beeped softly. A new message was coming through the encrypted Council channel. Her blood went cold as she read it. Phase 7 begins in 6 months. Target Zephyrian Confederacy. Use human fleet for complete elimination. Reason to give humans. Zephyrians developing planet-killer weapons. Real reason. Zephyrians questioning Council authority and spreading rebellion. Elena knew the Zephyrians. They were a peaceful alliance of 5 species, who spent most of their time studying art and philosophy. The idea that they were building planet-killer weapons was absurd, but Elena also knew that if the Council gave the order, humanity would attack without question, just like they always had. Elena's hands moved quickly across her controls. She began copying every file, every message, every piece of evidence she could find. The Council's security was good, but Elena had learned to be better. Years of military training had taught her to find weaknesses and exploit them. As she worked, Elena thought about her crew. Good people, all of them. Lieutenant Santos, who sent half his pay home to his family on Earth. Commander Chen, who had saved Elena's life twice in battle. Engineer Park, who could fix anything and always had a joke ready. They all believed they were heroes protecting the galaxy. How could Elena tell them they were actually the villains? The download finished just as Elena heard footsteps in the corridor outside her command center. She quickly closed the files and switched to a routine status report as Lieutenant Santos walked in. "Captain, you should be sleeping. Santos said with concern in his voice. "We have the patrol mission tomorrow." Elena looked at the young officer and felt her heart break a little. Tomorrow they would fly to another system and probably destroy something the Council claimed was dangerous. Santos would follow orders with pride, never knowing he was being used. "Just finishing some paperwork," Elena lied. "Go back to bed. I'll be done soon." After Santos left, Elena sat alone in the dark command center. The stolen files felt like a weight on her chest. She was just one captain with one ship. How could she fight against something as powerful as the Galactic Council? How could she tell humanity that their 50 years of service had been based on lies? But Elena knew she had to try. Too many innocent people had died because humans believed they were doing the right thing. If the Council's plan continued, humanity would eventually destroy every free spirit in the galaxy. And when that work was done, humanity itself would be eliminated. Elena activated her ship's secure communication system. There was one person who might listen to her. One person with enough power to do something about this information. Admiral Chen Rodriguez was Elena's old commander, and the closest thing to a father she had ever known. If anyone would believe her, it would be Rodriguez. The message she composed was simple. "Admiral, I have discovered information about Council operations that you need to see immediately. Cannot discuss over normal channels. Request permission to return to Earth base for urgent briefing." As Elena waited for a response, she looked out at the stars through her command center window. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were living their peaceful lives, not knowing that humanity was being prepared to destroy them. Somewhere else, Council leaders were laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the primitive humans into doing their dirty work. But Elena was not going to let that happen. She had spent her life following orders without question. Now, for the first time, she was going to do what she knew was right, even if it meant fighting against everything she had believed in. The response from Admiral Rodriguez came quickly. "Permission granted. Return immediately. Safe travels, Elena." Elena smiled grimly as she ordered her crew to set course for Earth. The Galactic Council thought they could use humanity forever. They were about to learn that humans had one quality they had not counted on: the ability to say no when they discovered the truth. The journey home would take 5 days. Elena spent those days preparing for the hardest conversation of her life. She was about to tell Admiral Rodriguez that everything humanity had done in space was based on lies. She was about to suggest that humanity needed to turn against the very organization they had served for 50 years. As Earth grew larger in her ship's view screen, Elena whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. She was about to start a war that could destroy humanity, but if she did nothing, humanity would destroy itself by becoming the weapon the Council wanted them to be. Admiral Chen Rodriguez had known Elena Vasquez since she was a young lieutenant, fresh out of the academy. He had watched her grow from an eager recruit into one of humanity's best ship captains. So when she walked into his office on Earth's military base looking like she had seen a ghost, Rodriguez knew something was very wrong. "Admiral," Elena said, her voice tight with stress, "what I'm about to show you will change everything we believe about our place in the galaxy." Rodriguez poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from Elena. The older man had gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from decades of military service. He had led humanity through many difficult times, but he had never seen Elena look so troubled. Elena activated her portable data device and showed Rodriguez the files she had stolen from the Council's network. As the Admiral read message after message, his face grew darker with each revelation. "Class 7. Aggressive species," Rodriguez said quietly, reading from one of the files. "They've classified us as barely better than wild animals." "It gets worse, sir," Elena said. She showed him the mission reports that proved every human military action had been designed to eliminate the Council's enemies. "We haven't been keeping the peace, Admiral. We've been committing genocide for them." Rodriguez was quiet for a long time, studying the evidence. Finally, he looked up at Elena with sad, angry eyes. "How long have you known about this?" "1 week, sir. I came straight to you after confirming the files were real." Rodriguez stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the military base where thousands of human soldiers trained every day. Good people who believed they were serving a noble cause, just like he had believed for 50 years. "The Corvin mission last year," Rodriguez said slowly. "We destroyed their entire fleet because the Council said they were planning to attack civilian targets. The Corvins were trying to break free from council taxation, sir. They never threatened anyone. Rodriguez closed his eyes, remembering the proud Corvin commander who had died in that battle. The alien had fought bravely, even though he was clearly outmatched. Now Rodriguez understood why there had been such desperation in the Corvan's eyes. How many, Elena? How many innocent species have we destroyed? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. 17 species completely eliminated. 23 others relocated to prison planets. 46 independent colonies destroyed. The numbers hit Rodriguez like physical blows. Millions of innocent beings dead because humanity had believed the Council's lies. Rodriguez had given the orders for many of those missions personally. Over the next 3 days, Rodriguez quietly called in his most trusted officers. One by one, he showed them Elena's evidence. The reactions were always the same. Shock, then anger, then a terrible understanding of what they had done. Commander Sarah Park, head of Human Intelligence Operations, was the first to make the connection to current events. Sir, if this is true, then the upcoming mission to the Zephyrian systems is another genocide disguised as peacekeeping, Rodriguez finished. Yes, I believe it is. Dr. James Okafor, humanity's chief xenobiologist, had been studying alien species for 20 years. When Rodriguez showed him the files, Okafor's face went pale. Admiral, I need to check something, Okafor said, accessing his own research database. The Velnari species we relocated to the Outer Rim 5 years ago. The Council said their homeworld was dying from disease. Okafor's fingers moved quickly over his computer. When he found what he was looking for, his expression grew grim. The Velnari homeworld wasn't diseased, sir. My biological scans show it was perfectly healthy, but it was also rich in trilithium deposits. The Council started mining operations there 6 months after we moved the Velnari population. Another lie, Rodriguez said bitterly. Colonel Maria Santos, Elena's former instructor, had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up with barely controlled rage in her voice. They used our honor against us, Santos said. They knew humans would fight to protect the innocent, so they convinced us that their enemies were threats that needed to be stopped. Rodriguez nodded. And we were so grateful to be accepted into galactic society that we never questioned their motives. As more evidence piled up, a picture emerged of careful manipulation spanning decades. The Council had studied humanity before making first contact. They had learned about human psychology, human values, and human military capabilities. Then they had crafted the perfect lies to turn humans into willing weapons. The Council told humans that the galaxy was dangerous, and only their guidance could prevent wars. They told humans that quick, decisive action was needed to stop threats before they could grow larger. They told humans that their military strength was a gift that should be used to protect the weak. All lies designed to make humans feel proud of doing the Council's dirty work. General Patricia Williams, head of Human Fleet Command, brought disturbing news from her intelligence network. Admiral, my sources indicate the Council is moving up their timeline for the Zephyrian operation. They want it completed within the next 2 months. Why the rush? Rodriguez asked. Unknown, sir. But I've also received reports that several other species are beginning to question Council authority. The Andromedan Union has stopped paying tribute taxes. The Crystal Singers have closed their borders to Council ships. There are rumors of secret meetings between independent worlds. Elena leaned forward. Maybe other species are starting to wake up too. Maybe they're beginning to see through the Council's lies. Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes, thinking hard. Finally, he looked around the room at his assembled officers. We have 3 choices, he said. First, we can pretend we never saw this evidence and continue serving the Council. Second, we can confront the Council directly and demand explanations. Both of those options end with humanity being destroyed, Elena said. Exactly, which brings us to the third choice. Rodriguez's voice grew stronger. We can use the Council's own tactics against them. They want us to be their weapon? Fine, but we'll choose our own targets. Colonel Santos frowned. What do you mean, sir? Rodriguez activated the room's main display screen, showing a map of the galaxy. The Council expects us to attack the Zephyrians. Instead, we're going to protect them. We're going to tell every species the truth about what the Council has been doing, and we're going to give every oppressed world in the galaxy a chance to stand up for themselves. That's rebellion, sir, Commander Park said quietly. Yes, it is, Rodriguez agreed. But the alternative is continuing to be murderers for a government that sees us as disposable tools. Dr. Okafor raised a concern. Admiral, the Council has fleets from dozens of species. Even if we convince some of them to turn against the Council, we'll still be outnumbered. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Maybe, but we have one advantage the Council doesn't expect. For 50 years, we've been visiting every corner of the galaxy. We've made contact with species the Council considers too primitive to matter. We've helped refugees and survivors from the worlds we were ordered to destroy. We've built relationships based on something the Council has forgotten. Which is? Elena asked. Mercy, Rodriguez said. Every time the Council ordered us to eliminate a species completely, some of our commanders found ways to let survivors escape. Every time we were told to relocate a population, some of our people made sure they ended up on better worlds than planned. The Council thinks we always followed orders exactly. They're wrong. Elena remembered dozens of missions where commanders had bent the rules to help innocent people. She had done it herself more than once, reporting targets destroyed when she had actually helped them escape to safer systems. You're talking about starting a galactic civil war, General Williams said. Rodriguez nodded. The war already started 50 years ago. We just didn't know we were fighting on the wrong side. Over the next week, Rodriguez and his team began making secret contact with human commanders throughout the galaxy. The response was swift and angry. Every senior officer had stories of missions that hadn't made sense, of enemies who seemed more like victims, of orders that felt wrong but had to be followed. Captain Torres of the heavy cruiser Determination reported that the pirate base he had destroyed the previous month was actually a refugee camp for survivors of a Council taxation raid. Commander Jackson of the scout ship Pioneer said the dangerous weapons facility she had bombed was actually a school where children from multiple species learned together. The stories kept coming, each one adding to the weight of humanity's unknowing crimes. As the evidence mounted, Rodriguez made his decision. He sent a coded message to every human ship captain in the galaxy. Return to Earth immediately. Operational briefing required. Tell no one outside human command structure. Elena watched as ships began arriving at Earth from across the galaxy. Hundreds of vessels, thousands of crew members, all about to learn that their 50 years of service had been built on lies. Rodriguez looked out at the growing fleet and made a promise to himself. The Galactic Council had made humanity into killers through deception. Now humanity would use that same strength to become liberators through choice. The storm was gathering, and it would change the galaxy forever. The Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime was a massive dome of crystal and metal that could hold representatives from 1,000 worlds. Today, it buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. In the human section, Admiral Rodriguez sat with his senior staff, knowing that what happened in the next few hours would determine the fate of billions. Council leader Zixthera called the session to order with a sound like breaking glass. The tall, insect-like being had ruled the Council for over 2 centuries, and her authority was absolute. Around her, the other Council members took their positions, the gas-based ethereals floating in their containment suits, the crystalline Vorth humming in harmonic frequencies, and dozens of other species that formed the Council's inner circle. We gathered today to address a growing threat to galactic peace, Zixthera announced, her translator making her clicking speech understandable to all species present. Intelligence reports indicate that the Zephyrian Confederacy is developing weapons of mass destruction in violation of galactic law. Rodriguez felt his jaw clench. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. He looked around the chamber and saw many delegates nodding in agreement. They trusted the Council completely, just as humanity once had. A holographic display activated above the chamber, showing images of Zephyrian worlds. The 5 species that made up the Confederacy were shown in their daily lives. Zephyrian artists creating beautiful sculptures, Melodian musicians playing in crystal gardens, and Lumina philosophers teaching young students under golden trees. These images are deceptive, Zixthera continued. Our intelligence shows that beneath this peaceful facade, the Zephyrians are building planet-killer devices capable of destroying entire star systems. Rodriguez knew it was a lie, but the evidence the Council presented looked real. Fake sensor readings showed energy signatures consistent with massive weapons. Doctored communications suggested meetings between Zephyrian leaders and known terrorists. The Council had spent decades perfecting the art of creating believable lies. The threat is immediate, announced Council Member Vrexhan, whose species looked like walking crystals. The Zephyrians must be stopped before they can use these weapons against innocent worlds. Therefore, Zixathera said, her multifaceted eyes turning toward the human delegation, we call upon our human allies to carry out immediate military action against the Zephyrian Confederacy. A complete elimination protocol is authorized. The chamber fell silent. Rodriguez felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him and his people. This was the moment he had been dreading and preparing for since Elena had brought him the evidence of the Council's true nature. Complete elimination protocol. The words sounded clinical, but Rodriguez knew what they meant. Every Zephyrian world would be attacked. Every ship would be destroyed. Every member of their species would be killed. It would be genocide disguised as a preemptive strike, just like so many missions before. Rodriguez stood slowly, feeling the attention of the entire chamber focus on him. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much war. Today those eyes carried a sadness that seemed to weigh down his shoulders. The human fleet stands ready to serve the Council, Rodriguez began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. He saw several Council members relax, believing that humanity would once again follow orders without question. However, Rodriguez continued, and the words seemed to echo through the vast space, we have concerns about the intelligence regarding Zephyrian weapons development. A murmur ran through the chamber. Council member Klexthor, who resembled a giant mantis, leaned forward with interest. What concerns? Zixathara asked, her voice taking on a sharp edge. Rodriguez activated his own holographic display, showing the results of recent human reconnaissance missions to Zephyrian space. Our scouts have conducted thorough scans of Zephyrian worlds over the past month. We find no evidence of weapons development beyond basic planetary defense systems. The lie was perfect because it was mostly true. Rodriguez had indeed sent scouts to Zephyrian space, though their real purpose was to establish communication with Zephyrian leaders and warn them of the coming attack. Your scouts are mistaken, Zixathera said coldly. Council intelligence is far superior to human scanning technology. Perhaps, Rodriguez agreed. But human military doctrine requires us to verify targets before engaging in elimination protocols. We request additional time to confirm the threat. The chamber erupted in angry clicks, buzzes, and harmonics as council members conferred among themselves. Rodriguez could see their frustration. For 50 years, humans had never questioned orders. They had been the perfect soldiers, following every command without hesitation. Council member Teferan, whose species looked like walking trees, spoke up. The human request is reasonable. Verification prevents unnecessary conflict. But Zixathera's response was swift and harsh. The human request shows weakness and delays necessary action. The Zephyrian threat is real and immediate. We order immediate compliance with elimination protocols. Rodriguez felt the moment crystallizing around him. Every human in the chamber was watching him, waiting to see what he would do. Elena Vasquez, sitting in the observer section, gave him an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. Council Leader Zixathera, Rodriguez said formally, I respectfully request permission to address this chamber regarding the Zephyrian situation. Permission denied, Zixathera snapped. You have your orders. Carry them out. Rodriguez looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the ethereal delegates floating in their suits, species so advanced they had transcended physical form, yet still willing to watch genocide happen in silence. He saw the crystalline Vorth, whose beautiful songs could move mountains, nodding in agreement with mass murder. He saw dozens of other species, all of them complicit in the Council's lies. And then Rodriguez saw something that made his heart race. In the observer section, delegates from dozens of non-Council species were watching him with intense interest. These were representatives from worlds that the Council considered too primitive or too poor to matter. They had been allowed to observe but not participate in Council sessions. Among them, Rodriguez recognized faces from species that humanity was supposed to have eliminated or relocated. The Velnari commander whose homeworld had been strip-mined after his people were moved. The Corvan ambassador whose fleet Rodriguez had personally destroyed. Survivors from a dozen different peacekeeping missions. They were all watching him, waiting to see if humanity would finally choose a different path. Rodriguez straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Zixathera. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. No. The single word hit the chamber like a physical blow. The silence that followed was absolute. For several seconds, no one moved, no one spoke, no one even seemed to breathe. Zixithera's translator crackled with static as if it couldn't process what it had heard. "Repeat your response, Admiral Rodriguez." Rodriguez smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he had carried for 50 years. "I said no, Council Leader. Humanity declines to carry out elimination protocols against the Zephyrian Confederacy." The chamber exploded into chaos. Council members screamed in languages that translators couldn't handle. Delegates from observer species began shouting questions and demands for explanations. Security forces started moving toward the human section. Through the noise, Rodriguez heard one voice rising above the others. Ambassador Lithara of the Zephyrian Confederacy had been sitting in the defendants section, waiting to make a final plea for her people's lives. Now she stood and spoke in a voice that somehow carried over all the chaos. "Why?" she asked, looking directly at Rodriguez. "Why do you refuse? Your species has never disobeyed the Council before." Rodriguez met her gaze, seeing hope and confusion in her large golden eyes. "Because 50 years ago humanity made a mistake. We trusted the wrong people. We believed lies because we wanted to belong to something greater than ourselves. We let that desire turn us into weapons pointed at innocent people." The chamber was gradually quieting as delegates strained to hear Rodriguez's words. "Today, we choose differently," Rodriguez continued. "Today, humanity remembers that our greatest strength was never our weapons or our ships. Our greatest strength is our ability to choose compassion over cruelty, truth over comfortable lies, and justice over obedience." Zixithera's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "You dare defy the authority of the Galactic Council? You who are nothing but a primitive warrior species barely worthy of membership?" Rodriguez nodded slowly. "You're right about one thing, Council Leader. We are warriors, but we choose our own battles now." The implications of Rodriguez's defiance began to sink in throughout the chamber. For the first time in galactic history, a member species had directly refused a council directive. The precedent was staggering. "This is treason," declared Council Member Vrexhan. "The penalty is expulsion from civilized society and military sanctions." "Then so be it," Rodriguez replied calmly. As security forces surrounded the human delegation, Rodriguez looked up at the observer section where representatives from oppressed species watched in amazement. He saw something in their faces that gave him hope. The dawning realization that if the Council's response was swift and brutal, within hours of Admiral Rodriguez's defiance, emergency broadcasts went out across the galaxy, declaring humanity in violation of their membership charter. Council fleets began moving toward human space from a dozen different sectors, their mission clear: teach the galaxy what happened to species that refused to obey. But the Council had made a critical error. They had spent 50 years using humanity as their weapon, sending human ships to every corner of the galaxy on peacekeeping missions. They had never stopped to consider what relationships humans might have built during those 5 decades of contact. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her ship, the Defiant, watching as her communication system lit up with incoming messages. The first came from an unexpected source, Commander Thrak of the Velnari Resistance. "Captain Vasquez," the alien's scarred face appeared on her screen. "My scouts report Council fleets moving toward Earth. The Velnari people have not forgotten that you gave us 3 hours to evacuate our civilians before destroying our military base. We offer our ships to help defend humanity." Elena stared at the screen in amazement. 3 years ago, she had been ordered to eliminate the Velnari fleet completely. Instead, she had sent a coded warning that gave them time to save their families. She had reported the mission as completed, never expecting to hear from the Velnari again. The next message came from Captain Zorith of the Corvin survivors. "Admiral Rodriguez destroyed our fleet, but he also made sure our escape pods reached friendly space. The Corvin clans remember honor. We stand with humanity." Then came Captain Ural of the Crystal Singers, whose homeworld humanity was supposed to have sterilized. "Your people told the Council we were all dead, but you helped us relocate to the hidden nebula. The Singer ships are yours to command." The messages kept coming. Species after species that humanity was supposed to have eliminated or relocated offered their help. Elena began to understand what had really happened during those 50 years of missions. Human commanders had been ordered to commit genocide, but many of them had found ways to show mercy instead. When the Council ordered the elimination of the aquatic builders, human ships had reported complete destruction, while secretly helping the entire species relocate to ocean worlds in the Outer Rim. When the Council wanted the forest walkers removed from their resource-rich planet, humanity had moved them to an even better world and told the Council they had been scattered to primitive settlements. Decades of small acts of mercy were now paying off in ways the Council never expected. Dr. Sarah Okafor was coordinating with xenobiologists from dozens of species, sharing information that painted a complete picture of the Council's crimes. The ethereals had once been a physical species before the Council convinced them to upload their consciousness into machines, making them dependent on Council technology. The Vorth crystals that produced their beautiful songs were actually sentient beings that the Council kept enslaved. Even many Council member species were victims of manipulation and control. Admiral Dr. Okafor reported to Rodriguez, "We're receiving data from resistance movements on 37 Council worlds. The truth about human missions is spreading faster than the Council can contain it." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "What about our own preparations?" General Williams had been working around the clock to coordinate humanity's defense. "Sir, we have 200 human ships ready for combat, plus another 150 vessels from allied species. It's not enough to match the Council's numbers, but it's more than they expected us to have." The real advantage came from an unexpected source. For 50 years, human engineers had been working on primitive worlds, helping to build infrastructure and defense systems. What the Council didn't know was that those engineers had been installing hidden capabilities in everything they built. Colonel Santos activated a galaxy-wide communication network that humanity had been secretly constructing for decades. "Admiral, we can now communicate instantly with any world that has human-built systems. That's about 60% of the galaxy." Rodriguez smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then it's time to tell everyone the truth." The broadcast began at 1800 Galactic Standard Time. Elena Vasquez appeared on screens across thousands of worlds, speaking directly to beings who had never heard an uncensored human voice before. "People of the galaxy," Elena began, "my name is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet. For 50 years, my species has served as soldiers for the Galactic Council. Today we learned the truth about what we were really doing." Elena's broadcast was accompanied by the stolen Council files, translated into hundreds of languages. She showed the messages that referred to humans as weapons. She displayed the real reasons behind every mission humanity had carried out. She revealed the Council's classification system that divided all species into categories based on their usefulness. "We were told we were keeping the peace," Elena continued. "Instead, we were eliminating anyone who questioned Council authority. We were told we were protecting the innocent. Instead, we were destroying entire species whose only crime was wanting freedom." The reaction was immediate and explosive. On Council worlds, populations that had lived in fear for centuries suddenly understood that they were not alone. Independent species realized that their accidents and natural disasters had been deliberate attacks. Resistance movements that had been hiding in shadows came forward to share their stories. But the most important response came from an unexpected source. Captain Zara Keth of the Andromedan Union appeared on the communication network, her metallic features set in determined lines. "The Andromedan Union has been questioning Council policies for months," she announced. "Now we understand why. We formally declare our independence from Council authority and offer our fleets to defend any species choosing freedom." Within hours, similar declarations came from dozens of other species. The Crystalline Collective, the Nomad Fleets, the Deep Space Miners Guild, and many others announced their break from Council rule. The Council's response was predictable. They declared all rebellious species to be terrorists and authorized complete military suppression. But when their fleets arrived at rebel worlds, they found something that shocked them: organized resistance backed by human military technology and tactics. The first major battle took place at Kepler Station, a trading hub near the galactic core. Council forces expected to find a defenseless civilian population. Instead, they encountered a joint defense force of humans: Velnari, Corvins, and Crystal Singers fighting with coordinated precision. Captain Torres of the human cruiser. Determination led the defense, using tactics that the Council had never seen before. Instead of the straightforward attacks that Council forces expected, The defenders used hit-and-run strikes, coordinated flanking maneuvers, and psychological warfare. Council ships. This is Captain Torres, he broadcast on open channels. You are attacking civilians whose only crime is refusing to be enslaved. I call on all Council ship crews to examine your orders and decide if this is really what you want to fight for. The psychological impact was devastating. Many Council ship crews were from species that had been manipulated and controlled for generations. Hearing direct challenges to Council authority, backed by proof of Council crimes, caused massive defections. The second battle took place at the Zephyrian homeworld, where Council forces arrived expecting to find an easy target. Instead, they encountered a defense fleet that included ships from 20 different species, all coordinated by human tactical expertise. Admiral Rodriguez himself led this defense, broadcasting continuously to Council forces. Council ships, you are being ordered to commit genocide against innocent people. Your own leaders have classified your species as expendable tools, just like they did to us. We offer you a choice. Continue serving masters who see you as disposable, or join us in building a galaxy where all species are truly equal. The defections began immediately. Entire Council squadrons switched sides mid-battle when their crews realized they were fighting to preserve a system that oppressed them too. The Council's careful control over information began to collapse as ship-to-ship communications spread the truth faster than official channels could contain it. Dr. Okafor made another crucial discovery during the battles. Admiral, we found evidence that the Council has been suppressing technological development across the galaxy. They've been keeping species dependent by preventing them from advancing beyond certain levels. What do you mean? Rodriguez asked. The artificial limits on faster-than-light travel, energy production, and communication technology. The Council told everyone these limits were for safety, but they were really to prevent species from becoming powerful enough to challenge Council authority. With human help, allied species began breaking through these artificial barriers. Ships started moving faster, communicating more efficiently, and coordinating on levels that the Council had thought impossible. The third major engagement took place at the Council's primary military base in the Rigel sector. This time, the attacking force was made up entirely of former Council species who had learned the truth about their manipulation. The base's commander, a Council loyalist named Vexitar, broadcast humanity could say no to the county. The final battle for the galaxy's future took place at Nexus Prime, the Council's ancient homeworld. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Liberator, humanity's new flagship, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history approached the heavily defended system. 200 human ships flew alongside vessels from over 300 different species. Former enemies fought side by side, united by their shared desire for freedom from Council oppression. The sight was beautiful and terrible, a rainbow of ship designs representing every corner of the galaxy, all committed to ending thousands of years of manipulation and control. The Council had retreated to their final stronghold after losing battle after battle across the galaxy. Their member species had abandoned them one by one, as the truth about Council crimes spread through every star system. Now only the core Council species remained, backed by automated defense systems and the last loyal military units. Admiral, Captain Elena Vasquez reported from her position as Fleet Tactical Coordinator. Long-range sensors show massive defensive preparations around Nexus Prime. They've activated weapon platforms that have been dormant for centuries. Rodriguez nodded grimly. They're making their final stand. Signal all fleet commanders to prepare for coordinated assault. But as the Allied fleet approached the outer edge of the Nexus system, something unexpected happened. A communication channel opened, and the voice that came through was not from the Council leadership. Admiral Rodriguez, this is Commander Wilex of the Nexus Defense Fleet. We formally surrender our positions and request safe passage for our crews. Similar messages began arriving from throughout the system. The Council's own military forces were abandoning their posts, unwilling to die defending leaders who had lied to them for millennia. Admiral, Dr. Okafor reported from the science station. We're receiving surrender signals from 60% of the Council's defense forces. The remaining units appear to be automated systems rather than crewed vessels. Rodriguez felt a mix of relief and sadness. He was glad that fewer lives would be lost in the final battle, but he also understood the tragedy of what they were witnessing. Entire civilizations were collapsing, as species realized that their entire social structure had been built on lies. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted only 6 hours. Without their military forces, the Council's defense systems were quickly overwhelmed by the combined fleet. As Allied ships entered orbit around the Council homeworld, Rodriguez prepared for the moment he had been both dreading and anticipating. A holographic communication request came from the planet's surface. When Rodriguez accepted it, the image of Council leader Zixathara appeared before him. The ancient being looked smaller somehow, diminished by the collapse of everything she had built. "Admiral Rodriguez," Zixathara said, her translator conveying bitter anger, "you have doomed the galaxy to chaos and war. Without Council guidance, the primitive species will destroy themselves and everything we have built." Rodriguez studied the alien leader who had orchestrated so much suffering. "Council leader, you had thousands of years to prove that your way worked. Instead, you created a galaxy built on fear, lies, and genocide. Now other species will have a chance to show they can do better." "Impossible," Zixathara clicked. "Species like yours lack the wisdom to govern themselves. You will tear the galaxy apart within a generation." "Maybe," Rodriguez admitted, "but that will be our choice to make, not yours." The surrender ceremony took place on the surface of Nexus Prime, in the same crystal chamber where Rodriguez had first defied the Council months earlier. This time the positions were reversed. Representatives from hundreds of species surrounded the few remaining Council members, while Rodriguez stood in the center of the room. Ambassador Lithara of the Zephyrian Confederacy served as the ceremony's coordinator. Her people had been chosen to organize the proceedings because they had nearly been the Council's final victims. "The Galactic Council stands accused of crimes against sapient life, spanning thousands of years," Lithara announced. "Genocide, enslavement, manipulation, and the systematic oppression of free peoples across the galaxy." The evidence was overwhelming. Decades of hidden files revealed the full scope of the Council's crimes. Hundreds of species had been eliminated not for being dangerous, but for refusing to submit to Council authority. Entire civilizations had been destroyed to steal their resources or eliminate their ideas. When the time came for sentencing, Rodriguez found himself facing a choice he had never wanted to make. The assembled species looked to humanity for guidance, expecting them to decide the Council's fate. Elena Vasquez stood beside Rodriguez as he addressed the chamber. "The Council taught us that some species are too dangerous to exist freely in civilized society. They taught us that strong actions are needed to protect the innocent from those who would harm them. They taught us that sometimes entire populations must be sacrificed for the greater good." The chamber was silent as Rodriguez's words echoed through the crystal. "Space, we learned those lessons well," Rodriguez continued. "The question now is whether we will use those lessons the same way the Council did, or whether we will choose a different path." Rodriguez looked directly at Zixathara and the other Council leaders. "You expected us to execute you, didn't you? You expected us to become exactly what you made us into, killers who eliminate threats without mercy?" Zixathara's multifaceted eyes glittered with defiance. "It is what any rational species would do. We are too dangerous to let live." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "You're right. You are dangerous. Your ideas about species hierarchy and the need for control have caused immeasurable suffering. Your belief that some beings are more valuable than others has justified genocide on an industrial scale. Then you understand why we must be destroyed?" Zixathara said. Rodriguez smiled sadly. "No, Council leader. We understand why your ideas must be destroyed. But you, as individuals, will live." The chamber erupted in surprised clicks, buzzes, and harmonics as delegates expressed shock at Rodriguez's decision. "The Council leadership will be relocated to a single system," Rodriguez announced. "Their access to faster-than-light travel will be limited. Their ability to communicate beyond their assigned worlds will be monitored. They will live out their natural lives, but they will never again have the power to oppress others." "This is the same fate you planned for humanity," Elena added, addressing Zixathara directly. "Contained, controlled, and prevented from harming others. The difference is that we will ensure you are treated with basic dignity, something you never offered your victims." As the Council leaders were led away to their exile, Rodriguez turned to address the assembled delegates from across the galaxy. These beings represented thousands of different species, cultures, and ways of thinking. The challenge of uniting them in peace seemed almost impossible. "We stand at a crossroads," Rodriguez said. "For thousands of years, this galaxy has been controlled by fear and hierarchy. Species were ranked by their usefulness to those in power. Individuals were valued based on their willingness to obey authority without question." Rodriguez gestured to the diverse crowd around him. "Today we choose a different path. Today we say that every sapient being has inherent worth, regardless of their species or their power. Today we commit to building a galaxy based on cooperation, rather than domination." The response was not immediate unity. Delegates began arguing about territories, resources, and representation. Some species demanded compensation for centuries of oppression. Others worried about their ability to defend themselves without council protection. A few even suggested that humanity should become the new galactic authority. Rodriguez listened to the debates with growing understanding. Creating a free galaxy would be harder than destroying the council's authority. Freedom was messier than tyranny, more complex than simple obedience to higher power. Dr. Okafor presented the solution that would eventually become the foundation of the new galactic order. Rather than trying to create one government for all species, we should create a system that allows different forms of government to coexist peacefully. The Galactic Assembly that emerged from these discussions was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of a ruling council that made decisions for everyone, it was a forum where species could coordinate their actions while maintaining their independence. Each species had one vote, regardless of their population or military power. Decisions required broad consensus rather than simple majorities. Most importantly, no species could be forced to participate in actions they found morally objectionable. Elena Vasquez was chosen as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. As she stood in the renovated chamber on Nexus Prime, now filled with equals rather than rulers and subjects, she reflected on how far they had all come. "The old council promised order and peace," Elena said in her inaugural address. "What they delivered was oppression and hidden war. We cannot promise that our new system will be perfect. We cannot promise that there will never be conflicts or disagreements." Elena looked around the chamber at representatives from species that had been enemies just months before. "But we can promise this. Every voice will be heard. Every species will have the right to chart its own course, and never again will anyone have to choose between freedom and survival."